My name is Claire Donovan, and I never imagined my own family would be torn apart by the man I trusted most. I am 31 years old, a forensic accountant living in Chicago. 10 months ago, I thought I buried my husband Michael after he died, heroically saving others in a massive factory fire. I was wrong. The truth would shatter everything I believed about love, loyalty, and justice. I still remember the day they told me Michael was gone. The hollow knock on our door. The solemn faces of the fire chief and chaplain standing on our porch. Their carefully rehearsed words that my firefighter husband had been trapped when the roof collapsed at the Westlake chemical plant. They said his body was recovered, but severely burned. The closed casket funeral. The $500,000 death benefit that helped me keep our modest bungalow in Ravenswood. All of it was a lie. After Michael died, I invited my widowed mother to move in with me. I could not bear the emptiness of our home, and she needed someone after losing Dad to cancer 3 years earlier. We grieved together, supported each other, found a new normal in our shared loss. Mom focused on tending the garden Michael had started. I threw myself into my work as a forensic accountant at Delman Hayes and Partners. Tracking money trails for corporate litigation cases became my escape. I never imagined those same skills would soon be needed to unravel the greatest betrayal of my life. It happened on a sticky July evening, the kind where the Chicago humidity clings to your skin like a damp towel. I was riding the Brown Line home after working late. The car was half empty. Just a few commuters staring at phones or gazing blankly at passing buildings. I was standing near the doors reviewing case notes on my tablet when the train stopped at Merchandise Mart. The doors slid open and several passengers boarded. I did not look up immediately. But then something caught my peripheral vision. A scuffed leather turnout coat. The kind firefighters wear. My breath caught in my throat. That coat. I knew that coat. The distinctive scratch along the left sleeve from when Michael had rescued a child from a car accident last year. The small CFD patch, sewn slightly crooked because I had repaired it myself. The coat I had insisted be buried with Michael because it was a part of him. I raised my eyes slowly, almost afraid of what I might see. And there he was, my dead husband, Michael, standing 6 feet away from me, alive, breathing. His dark hair was shorter now. A beard covered the strong jaw I used to trace with my fingers at night. But those eyes, those deep brown eyes that had looked into mine and promised forever, I would know them anywhere. The train lurched forward and I grabbed the pole to steady myself. My knees threatened to buckle. My heart pounded so hard I felt it might burst through my chest. Was I hallucinating? Was grief finally breaking my mind? But no, he was real, solid. His eyes scanning the car nervously before settling into a seat, facing away from me. I should have called out, should have screamed or confronted him right there. But shock froze my voice. My mind raced through impossible scenarios. A twin brother he never mentioned. A doppelganger with an identical coat. But deep down I knew. This was Michael, my husband, somehow alive after I had mourned him for 10 agonizing months. When he exited at Kedzie, I followed, keeping a careful distance, moving on autopilot. He walked briskly south down Kedzie Avenue past storefronts and apartments. I trailed behind using parked cars and groups of pedestrians as cover. Everything felt surreal, like I was floating outside my body watching someone else track a ghost. He led me to an area of the south side I would normally avoid after dark. A neglected industrial zone of abandoned warehouses and forgotten businesses. Michael approached a massive brick building with boarded windows and faded signage that read, Apex Storage and Distribution. He glanced around before punching a code into a keypad hidden behind a rusted electrical box. A side door opened and he disappeared inside. I stood across the street in the shadow of a defunct auto parts store trying to process what was happening. My husband was alive. The man I had grieved for had somehow faked his own death. Betrayed our vows, left me drowning in sorrow while he started a new life, watched from afar as I suffered. Every memory of our 7 years together suddenly felt tainted, poisoned. I waited nearly an hour before more people arrived at the warehouse. 3 men, then 2 women, each entering using the same hidden keypad. When no one had come or gone for 20 minutes, I made a decision that would change everything. I crossed the street and approached the door, my fingers shaking as I tried to recall the sequence Michael had punched in. When the 5th attempt failed, I heard footsteps approaching from inside. I darted around the corner of the building, pressing myself against the rough brick wall. The door opened and voices spilled out. I recognized Michael's instantly, but the words I heard turned my blood to ice. "The money from the foundation needs to be moved again," Michael said. "They are getting too close to the Parkside account. We need that to stay clean for the weapons shipment next month," another voice responded, one with the gravelly texture of someone who smokes too much. "You worry too much, Donovan. The deputy marshal took care of everything. Nobody is looking for you. Your wife took the insurance money without question. And now we need it back. All of it. 500,000 plus another 100 in interest by Labor Day. Or things get complicated for everyone." I covered my mouth to stifle a gasp. Insurance money, weapons shipment, deputy marshal. The pieces were beginning to form a horrifying picture. Michael had not died in that fire. He had staged his death. And now these people, whoever they were, wanted the death benefit money I had received. I slipped away from the warehouse and walked, nearly a mile before my shaking legs would allow me to call a rideshare. By the time I arrived home, my shock had hardened into something else: determination, rage, the need to understand. Mom was already asleep when I entered our bungalow. I was grateful. I could not have maintained a normal conversation, not with what I now knew. Instead, I went straight to my home office and began what I do best: following the money. I pulled out all the documentation from Michael's life insurance policy, the autopsy report, the fire department incident records, everything I had been too grief-stricken to examine closely before. Now, with new eyes, I began to see inconsistencies. The autopsy had been signed by Deputy Fire Marshal James Reeves, a name I vaguely remembered Michael mentioning at department functions. The body had been identified through dental records, but there was no mention of DNA confirmation. The incident report listed details of the recovery that seemed vague in retrospect. I worked through the night pulling threads, examining bank records, looking at our joint accounts that I had maintained after Michael's death. There were no unexplained withdrawals, no suspicious transfers, but something still felt off. I expanded my search to look at the charities and foundations that had reached out to me after Michael's death. The Chicago First Responders Family Foundation had been particularly supportive. They had organized meals, provided grief counseling, and even offered financial planning assistance. I had been too overwhelmed to accept most of their help, but now I wondered. I dug into their financial filings, public records, tax documents, everything I could access without raising alarms. By dawn, I had discovered disturbing patterns: large donations coming in from anonymous sources, money moving between different charitable organizations with vague connections to police and firefighter families, funds disappearing into administrative costs and consulting fees paid to shell companies. It was sophisticated, professional, the kind of financial maze I was trained to navigate. I realized I needed help, someone who knew the world of first responders but was not directly connected to the fire department, someone who would believe a story that sounded like the ravings of a grieving widow. And I knew exactly who to call. Jordan Alvarez had been a paramedic for 8 years before leaving to start a popular podcast called First Response that explored the untold stories of emergency workers. She and Michael had worked together occasionally, and she had sent me a kind message after his death. We had never been close, but I remembered Michael saying she was like a bulldog when she got hold of a story. Exactly what I needed now. I called her that morning and asked to meet somewhere private. She agreed to coffee at a small cafe in Andersonville, far from any of Michael's usual haunts. When I arrived, Jordan was already there, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had the compact build of someone who had spent years lifting patients and equipment. I told her everything. My voice, low and steady, The train sighting. Following Michael to the warehouse. The conversation I overheard. The financial irregularities I had begun to uncover. To her credit, she did not immediately suggest I needed psychiatric help. Instead, she asked precise questions. Wanted specific details, locations, times, names. "So you think Michael faked his death because of gambling debts?" she said after I finished. "And now these people, whoever they are, want the insurance money, and they are using charities for first responder families to launder money for weapons trafficking." When she laid it out like that, it sounded crazy even to me. But I nodded. "I know how it sounds," I said. "But I know what I saw. And the financial records do not lie. Something is happening. With these foundations, money is moving in ways that do not make sense for legitimate charities." Jordan took a long sip of her coffee. "What do you need from me?" she finally asked. "I need someone who knows the first responder community," I replied. "Someone who can ask questions without raising suspicion. I need to understand how deep this goes and how Michael got involved. And I need to figure out what to do before Labor Day. That gives us 6 weeks. And your mother?" Jordan asked. "Does she know any of this?" I shook my head. "I have not told her. I cannot. Not until I understand more. If these people are dangerous, if they are running guns, I need to protect her." Jordan nodded slowly. "I always thought Michael was too straight-laced to get mixed up in anything like this. But I guess we never really know people. Not completely." She pulled out her phone and made some notes. "I will make some calls, reach out to contacts, see what I can find out about Deputy Marshal Reeves and any whispers about financial irregularities at these foundations. But Claire, you need to be careful. If these people think you know Michael is alive, if they think you are investigating them." She did not need to finish. I understood the stakes. This was not just about a husband who had betrayed me. It was about potentially dangerous criminals who had orchestrated an elaborate fraud, who were dealing in weapons, who had corrupted at least one official in the fire marshal's office. I promised Jordan I would be cautious, that I would not confront Michael or take any risks. It was a promise I would soon break. The next 2 weeks were a blur of careful investigation. By day, I maintained my normal routine at work, analyzing financial data for clients, attending meetings, pretending my world had not been shattered. By night, I built a case, meticulously tracking money flowing through a network of charities and foundations, allegedly supporting first responder families. Jordan was invaluable. Her connections in the emergency services community gave us access to information and rumors I could never have obtained alone. She discovered that Deputy Fire Marshal Reeves had recently purchased a vacation home in Michigan worth well over his annual salary. That 3 other firefighters from Michael's house had abruptly retired or relocated in the past year. That the IEU, Chicago First Responders Family Foundation, had connections to similar organizations in 5 other major cities. It was Jordan who also uncovered the first solid evidence about Michael's gambling debts. A former paramedic who now worked security at a casino in Hammond remembered Michael as a regular at high-stakes poker games, remembered him arguing with men in expensive suits about money he owed. This was a side of my husband I had never seen, never suspected. Our finances had always seemed stable, if not extravagant. Now I wondered what other secrets he had kept. 3 weeks after seeing Michael on the train, I decided it was time for a more direct approach. The warehouse on the south side appeared to be a central meeting place for whatever operation Michael was involved with. Jordan and I had observed the building from a distance, noting regular patterns of people coming and going. Always entering. Using the keypad. Always careful to check for surveillance. I knew it was risky, but I needed to get inside, to find concrete evidence of what they were doing, to understand exactly what Michael had become involved with. Jordan protested strongly, said we should take what we had to the FBI or at minimum continue our careful distance investigation. But I could feel the Labor Day deadline looming. Could sense that we were still missing crucial pieces of the puzzle. The opportunity came on a Thursday night. Through careful observation, we had identified a regular weekly meeting at the warehouse that Michael always attended. While he was occupied, There I planned to search our old bungalow where we had lived together, the home that now sheltered only my mother and my grief. I reasoned that if Michael had hidden evidence of his activities anywhere, it might be there, in places only he would know about. I told Mom I was working late. Jordan positioned herself near the warehouse to confirm when Michael arrived for his meeting, then signaled me it was clear to proceed with my search. I began in the obvious places: the loose floorboard in our bedroom closet where we had once kept emergency cash, the hollow space behind the basement electrical panel that Michael had jokingly called our apocalypse cubby. Nothing. Then I remembered the attic, the small finished space where Michael had kept mementos from his firefighting career and family heirlooms. I rarely went up there, especially after his death. It held too many memories. I pulled down the ladder and climbed into the musty space. Dust particles danced in the beam of my flashlight as I carefully moved through boxes of Michael's childhood trophies, his father's military medals, photo albums from before we met. Behind a stack of old Chicago Fire Department yearbooks I found a fireproof lockbox I had never seen before. It was secured with a combination lock. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. His badge number. Nothing. Then on a hunch, I tried the date of the factory fire, the day he supposedly died. The lock clicked open. Inside was evidence of a life I never knew my husband had been living. Betting slips, IOUs, a small notebook detailing gambling debts that had spiraled to over $300,000. There were threatening notes from someone identified only as V demanding payment, and most disturbing of all, a detailed plan for faking his death. Specifics about the factory fire, which firefighters would be on shift, notes about Deputy Marshal Reeves and how he would handle the paperwork, even calculations of the life insurance payout and how it would clear his debts with money to spare. It was all there in Michael's familiar handwriting, the meticulous planning of a man who had decided that abandoning his wife and faking his own death was preferable to facing his gambling, addiction, and financial ruin. I felt physically sick reading through it. This calculated betrayal from the man who had vowed to love and protect me. As I was photographing the documents with shaking hands, I heard a noise downstairs, a door opening. Footsteps too heavy to be my mother's. My blood froze. I quickly replaced the lockbox exactly as I had found it and silently moved to the top of the attic ladder, listening, waiting. Mom was speaking to someone, her voice carrying a surprised but pleased tone. Then I heard it, Michael's voice, here, in our home, talking to his mother-in-law who believed he was dead. I texted Jordan in panic. Michael here at house. Meeting must have ended early. What do I do? Her response was immediate. Hide, do not confront. I am on my way. I pulled up the attic ladder as quietly as possible and turned off my flashlight. Sitting in the dark, surrounded by the artifacts of Michael's former life, I listened to the conversation below. I just had to check on her, Michael was saying. Make sure she is okay, that both of you are okay. My mother's voice was emotional, confused. I do not understand. How are you here? We buried you. Claire has been devastated. I do not. I know, Michael interrupted. And I will explain everything. But right now, I need you to trust me. There are dangerous people involved. Claire and you could be at risk if they think she knows too much. I am trying to fix this, to make it right. But until then, you cannot tell Claire you saw me tonight. Promise me, Eleanor. Promise me. I could hear the confusion and distress in my mother's voice as she agreed. But Michael, what have you done? What is happening? The less you know, the safer you are, he replied. I just need a little more time. After Labor Day, everything will be different. I can explain then, maybe make amends. But until then, you say nothing to anyone. They talked for a few more minutes. Michael asking casual questions about how Mom was doing, about my work schedule and routines. Questions that, in light of what I now knew, seemed sinister rather than caring. Then he left with a final warning to maintain silence. I remained frozen, in the attic for nearly 30 minutes after he departed, processing what I had heard, the casual way he had manipulated my mother, his concern not for the pain he had caused but for what I might know about his activities. When I finally felt safe enough to come down, Jordan was already there, having let herself in with the spare key I had given her for emergencies. Together we told my mother everything, her shock and disbelief mirroring what I had felt on the train 3 weeks earlier. But as we showed her the evidence we had gathered, the financial records, the photographs of the documents in the lockbox, her disbelief turned to anger, an anger that matched my own. He used us, she said simply. Used our grief as a shield while he hid from his mistakes. That night we made a plan. With my mother now aware of the danger, we arranged for her to visit her sister in Minnesota, somewhere far from Chicago and the people threatening to collect on Michael's debts. Jordan and I would continue our investigation, but now with a new urgency and purpose. The next step was clear. We needed to understand exactly who was behind the weapons operation, who had enabled Michael to fake his death, how deep the corruption went in the fire marshal's office, and most importantly, how to protect ourselves before the Labor Day deadline. Jordan suggested we approach her former partner on the paramedic crew, a man named Marcus Teller, who had left emergency services to become a police detective, someone she trusted implicitly. I was hesitant to involve law enforcement given the evidence of corruption we had already found. But we needed allies, people with resources and authority that could help unravel this conspiracy. Detective Teller met us at a 24-hour diner far from his precinct. A tall man with prematurely gray hair and the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much of human nature at its worst. He listened without interruption as we laid out everything we had discovered, examined the evidence we had gathered, asked pointed questions about timelines and connections. "This is serious," he finally said. "Weapons trafficking, money laundering through charities, corruption in the fire marshal's office, and a firefighter who faked his own death to escape gambling debts." He shook his head. "If even half of what you suspect is true, this goes beyond what I can handle alone. But I cannot take this to my superiors without knowing who to trust." "Can you help us anyway?" I asked. "We have less than 2 weeks until Labor Day, until they come for the insurance money." Teller considered for a long moment. "I can run some background checks. Look into financial records for Reeves and the other firefighters who suddenly left. Maybe put some unofficial surveillance on that warehouse." He paused. "But you two need to back off, if these people are as dangerous as they sound." "I appreciate the concern," I said, cutting him off. "But this is my life they have destroyed. My husband who betrayed me. And I will not hide while they threaten what remains of my family." Teller looked like he wanted to argue, but Jordan intervened. "We will be careful," she promised. "No unnecessary risks. But we need to keep pushing forward. Time is not on our side." After that meeting, our investigation accelerated. Teller provided access to information we could not have obtained legally. Records of calls between Deputy Marshal Reeves and a burner phone we strongly suspected belonged to Michael. Financial data showing suspicious transactions between the Chicago First Responders Family Foundation and a company called Veritas Security Consultants. A company that on paper provided training to law enforcement but appeared to have no actual employees or offices. It was during this phase that I first encountered Vincent Castillo, a name that appeared repeatedly in our investigation, the initial V from the threatening notes in Michael's lockbox. Castillo owned several businesses including private security firms and construction companies, all seemingly legitimate. But Detective Teller informed us he had been investigated multiple times for connections to illegal weapons sales. Never charged due to lack of evidence or witnesses who suddenly became uncooperative. 1 week before Labor Day, we made our boldest move yet. Using my skills as a forensic accountant, I had identified the banking information for the Chicago First Responders Family Foundation, had tracked patterns of deposits and withdrawals that clearly indicated money laundering. With Detective Teller's help, we arranged for a retired FBI financial crimes specialist to review our findings. His assessment was unequivocal. This was a Sophisticated operation moving millions of dollars. Far more than just Michael's gambling debts. We now had enough to take to federal authorities, to put Michael Castillo-Reeves and everyone involved on their radar. But I hesitated. Something was still missing. I needed to understand why. Why Michael had chosen this path. How my husband had become someone capable of such elaborate deception, of abandoning the life and people he had claimed to love. The opportunity for answers came from an unexpected source. A text message from Michael himself to my phone. A phone number he should not have had since I had changed my number after his death. It contained only an address and a time. 9 p.m. Tonight. Jordan and Detective Teller both insisted it was a trap, that I should not go alone, that we should instead accelerate our plan to take everything to the FBI. But I could not let go of the chance to face Michael. To ask him directly why he had done this. I agreed to compromise. I would meet Michael, but with precautions. Jordan and Teller would be nearby monitoring. I would wear a recording device. At the first sign of danger, I would leave. The address was a small park near the lake. A public place, but quiet enough for a private conversation, especially in the evening. I arrived early, positioning myself on a bench with clear sightlines in all directions. Joggers passed occasionally. An elderly couple walked a small dog. Normal, peaceful scenes that contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside me. At exactly 9, Michael appeared walking alone along the lakefront path. He looked different than he had on the train. Clean-shaven now, hair neatly trimmed, wearing clothes I did not recognize. He sat beside me, leaving careful space between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You look good, Claire," he finally said. "I have missed you." The casual greeting ignited something in me, anger flaring hot and bright. "I have missed you," I repeated incredulously. "You watched me mourn you, watched me bury an empty casket, cry myself to sleep night after night, and you say you missed me." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I know it sounds inadequate. I know. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand. I was desperate. The debts, the threats. They were going to hurt you if I did not pay. Hurt your mother. I thought faking my death was the only way out. The insurance money would clear my debts. You would be safe. Eventually move on. So this was for my protection," I said flatly. "Not because you were a coward who could not face the consequences of your gambling addiction. Not because you found it easier to abandon your wife than to ask for help." Michael flinched. It was not that simple. He protested. "Castillo is not someone you negotiate with. He has people everywhere. Police, fire department, city offices. When I tried to get out to stop gambling, the threats escalated. They showed me photos of you, of your office, your routine. They made it clear what would happen if I did not pay. I wanted to believe him. To think that somewhere in this web of lies and betrayal was a man who had acted out of love, however misguided. But the evidence suggested otherwise. The careful planning, the new life he had built while I suffered. The way he had manipulated my mother during his visit to our home. "And now what?" I asked. "Your friends want the insurance money back. Money I have mostly used to pay off our mortgage, to support your mother-in-law after she lost her son. You expect me to just hand it over, to continue the lie." "I am working on another way," Michael said quickly. "A way to pay them back without involving you. If you can just buy me a little more time." "Time for what?" "To set up another scam, to fake another death. I think I have given you enough time, Michael. 10 months of grieving for a man who never really existed." I stood up, preparing to leave. Having the answers I came for, but finding no comfort in them. Michael grabbed my arm, his expression suddenly desperate. "Please, Claire. You do not understand. These people. What they are capable of. Just give me until Labor Day. If I cannot come up with the money by then," he hesitated, "then you can do whatever you want. Go to the police. Tell the world I am alive. But until then, please, for your own safety, stay out of this." I looked down at his hand on my arm, the hand that had once represented safety and love. Now it felt like a threat, a restraint. "I know about the weapons, Michael," I said quietly. "About the charities being used to launder money. About Deputy Marshal Reeves faking your autopsy. Do not pretend this is just about gambling debts anymore." His face paled. "You have been investigating. How much do you know? Who have you told?" I pulled my arm free. "Enough. I have told enough. And after Labor Day, I will tell everyone." As I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me, could sense the calculation happening behind them. I had shown my hand, let him know I was a threat to whatever operation he was part of. It was a dangerous move, but a necessary one. Now all the cards were on the table. Over the next 5 days, we accelerated our preparations. Detective Teller arranged for protection for my mother in Minnesota. Jordan compiled all the evidence we had gathered into a comprehensive file ready to present to federal authorities. I secured the financial records and documentation in multiple locations, digital copies encrypted and stored where they could be accessed if anything happened to me. The day before Labor Day, I received another text from Michael, a warning. "They know what you have been doing. They are coming for the money tomorrow. Get out of Chicago." A pause, then another message. "I am sorry for everything. Too little, too late." But the warning was clear. Castillo and his people were not waiting any longer. The deadline was here. That night, Jordan, Detective Teller, and I met at a hotel room we had booked under a false name. The time for investigation was over. Now we needed to act. The plan was to meet with FBI agents the next morning. Labor Day. To hand over everything we had gathered about the weapons, trafficking, the money laundering through first responder charities, and Michael's faked death. Detective Teller had arranged the meeting through trusted contacts, ensuring that Castillo's influence could not interfere. None of us slept much that night. The room was tense with anticipation and fear. We had uncovered something bigger and more dangerous than a firefighter escaping gambling debts, had pulled threads that revealed corruption extending into multiple city departments, had made ourselves targets for people who solved problems permanently. Labor Day dawned clear and hot, a final gasp of summer before Chicago autumn arrived. We gathered our evidence, prepared to leave for the meeting. That was when my phone rang. A number I did not recognize. I answered cautiously. It was Deputy Fire Marshal Reeves, his voice tense, urgent. "Claire, listen carefully. Castillo has Michael. He knows everything. About your investigation. About the evidence you have gathered. He wants the insurance money and all copies of your evidence at the warehouse. 2 hours. Or Michael dies. For real this time." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked suspiciously. "You are part of this. You faked his autopsy." "Michael is still one of us," Reeves replied. "A firefighter. I helped him. Because he saved my son from an overdose last year. Got him into rehab when no one else would help. I owed him. But this has gone too far. Castillo is cleaning house. Eliminating loose ends. I am calling from the airport. Getting out while I can. You should do the same." The line went dead. I looked at Jordan and Detective Teller, who had heard enough to understand the situation. "He could be lying," Teller said. "This could be a trap to get the evidence before we reach the FBI. Or Michael could really be in danger." Jordan countered. "Even after everything he did, he is still your husband, Claire." I found myself torn between competing impulses. The desire for justice, for Michael to face consequences for his betrayal, and the lingering embers of love that had once burned so brightly. Could I let him die even after everything he had done? "We need to split up," I decided finally. "You two take most of the evidence to the FBI meeting as planned. I will go to the warehouse with copies, enough to convince Castillo I am complying, but not enough to derail the case if something goes wrong." Both protested strongly. Neither wanted me to face Castillo alone. But I was resolute. This was my fight. My husband. My choice. In the end, we compromised. I would go to the warehouse, but Detective Teller would position officers nearby ready to intervene. Jordan would proceed with the FBI meeting, ensuring that regardless of what happened at the warehouse, the truth would come out. 2 hours later, I stood outside the familiar brick building on the south side, the same warehouse where this had all begun nearly 6 weeks ago. I carried a small thumb drive and a manila envelope containing selected financial records, enough to appear cooperative. I approached the door and punched in the code I had memorized from watching Michael all those weeks ago. The door clicked. Open. Inside the warehouse was mostly empty. Concrete floors, high ceilings with exposed beams and ductwork, a few shipping containers along one wall. In the center of the vast space was Michael, tied to a chair, face bruised, a cut above his eye dripping blood. Behind him stood Vincent Castillo. I recognized him from the photos in our investigation. Tall, expensively dressed, the relaxed posture of someone accustomed to power. 2 men with guns flanked him. "Hello, Claire," Castillo said pleasantly, as if welcoming me to a business meeting. "I see you decided to join us. Your husband was not sure you would come, given everything he has put you through." I kept my expression neutral, matching his calm tone. "I brought what you asked for. The financial records, evidence of the money laundering, everything we have gathered." Castillo smiled. "And the insurance money? Most of it is gone," I replied honestly. "Used to pay off our mortgage, support Michael's mother. I can give you what remains, about $150,000. And my silence. Michael's eyes met mine. Confusion mixed with something else. Hope, perhaps. Or simply surprise that I had come at all. "That is not the deal we had with your husband," Castillo replied, studying me carefully. "He promised $500,000 plus interest, used his own life as collateral. A debt is a debt, Mrs. Donovan. Then take it up with him," I said coldly. "He is the one who made promises he could not keep, who gambled away money he did not have, who lied to everyone, including you, apparently." Castillo laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "I like you, Mrs. Donovan. Direct. Practical. Your husband said you were smart. A financial investigator of some kind. He should have consulted you before getting in so deep." He moved closer, examining the thumb drive and envelope I had placed on a small table. "Between us. You know, I almost admire what you have done these past weeks," he continued conversationally, unraveling our operation piece by piece. "Finding the connections between the foundations. Following the money. Professional work. If circumstances were different, I might offer you a job." I kept my focus, ignoring the compliments. "What happens now?" I asked. "You have what you wanted. Evidence that could expose your operation. Let Michael go." Castillo shook his head regretfully. "I am afraid it is not that simple. You have seen too much. Know too much. Your investigation has created loose ends that need to be tied up." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward, raising his gun. I tensed, preparing for the worst. Then sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Castillo's expression hardened. "You brought the police," he said, anger replacing his previous casual demeanor. "Insurance," I replied. "Did you really think I would walk in here without protection?" The sounds of police cars approaching echoed through the warehouse. Castillo's men looked to him for direction. He hesitated, visibly calculating options. Michael chose that moment to act. Despite his restraints, he managed to throw himself sideways, knocking over the chair and creating momentary confusion. "Run, Claire!" he shouted. "Get out now!" I did not run. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the small taser Jordan had insisted I carry. As Castillo's attention split between the approaching sirens and Michael, I lunged forward, pressing it against his side and triggering it. He convulsed, dropping to his knees. His men raised their weapons but hesitated, not wanting to shoot their boss, who was still in my grip. That momentary hesitation was all that was needed. The warehouse doors burst open as Detective Teller and a tactical team rushed in. Shouting, weapons raised. Castillo's men surrendered quickly, recognizing they were outnumbered. In the chaos, I moved to Michael, still bound to the overturned chair. You came for me, he said wonderingly as I checked his injuries. After everything, you still came. I did not come for you. I replied, untying his restraints. I came for justice, for closure. You are going to face consequences, Michael. For the fraud, the fake death, everything. He nodded slowly. Understanding. I know, and I deserve it. But thank you for saving my life anyway. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, federal agents, and evidence collection. Castillo and his men were taken into custody. The warehouse was searched, revealing documents and computer files that would further strengthen the case against them. Michael was treated for his injuries, then arrested for insurance fraud, conspiracy, and a host of other charges. Watching him being led away in handcuffs was a moment of complex emotions. Relief that the danger had passed, satisfaction that justice was being served, sadness for what might have been if he had made different choices, had been brave enough to face his addiction and debts instead of running. 1 week later, I sat with Jordan on my back porch. The case against Castillo and his organization was proceeding rapidly. The evidence we had gathered, combined with what was found at the warehouse and testimony from Michael and others seeking deals, had exposed a massive operation. Weapons trafficking, money laundering, corruption in multiple city departments. It would take months, perhaps years, for all the legal proceedings to conclude. Michael was cooperating fully, facing significant prison time, but less than he might have without his assistance to authorities. Our marriage was over, divorce proceedings already initiated. But in our final conversation before I cut all ties, he had expressed genuine remorse, had apologized not just for the deception, but for the pain he had caused, for being too weak to seek help when there might still have been another path. My mother had returned from Minnesota, was slowly processing her own sense of betrayal and loss. We were healing together, finding a new definition of family in the key aftermath of Michael's deception. Do you regret it? Jordan asked, breaking the comfortable silence between us. Going to the warehouse that day, saving him. I considered the question carefully. No, I finally replied. Not saving him. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even Michael. But I regret that I did not see the signs earlier. That I was so wrapped up in my own life that I missed his struggles until it was too late. Jordan nodded, understanding. You cannot blame yourself for his choices, Claire. He had options. People who would have helped if he had asked. He chose deception instead. She was right, of course. In the end, that was the lesson I had taken from this entire ordeal. That love requires honesty to survive. That secrets and lies corrode even the strongest foundations. That family is defined not by blood or marriage certificates, but by those who stand beside you in your darkest moments. My name is Claire Donovan. 10 months ago, I thought I buried my husband. 6 weeks ago, I discovered he had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. Today, I am rebuilding my life. Stronger, wiser, more compassionate, but also more cautious. The scars remain, but they have become part of my story. A reminder that sometimes losing someone you love is not the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes, the worst is discovering they were never really who you thought they were at all. I wonder, how well do you really know the people closest to you? What secrets might they be keeping? And what would you do if you discovered the life you thought you were living was built on lies?